Hello, and welcome back to Lesson 2. My name is Jonavi.
And my name is Arya, and today we are covering conditional statements. To start, conditional statements are asking, is it true, or is the statement false? Conditional statements are equal to either true or false when evaluated. Some examples of conditional statements are, is it raining outside? Is 5 equal to 4? This is false. Is 2 less than 3? This is true. In our last session, we covered different variable types in Java. What kind of Java variable is equal to either true or false?
The answer to this is a Boolean. Booleans are Java variables that can be set to either true or false. Booleans can be set directly. For example, if we say boolean boolname is equal to true, we set the value of this boolean to equal true. Booleans can also be set indirectly. If we say boolean boolname2 is equal to the inequality 3 is less than 4, boolname2 is true because 3 is in fact less than 4. However, if we said boolean boolname2 is equal to the inequality 3 is greater than 4, this would be false because 3 is not greater than 4. Booleans can be set using conditional operators that compare two variables, like numbers. The conditional operators that Booleans use are as shown. If we put equal equal, this means that two things are equal. If we put exclamation mark equal, this means that two things are not equal. If we put a greater than symbol, it means that one value is greater than the other. And if we put a greater than symbol and then an equal sign, it means that one value is greater than or equal to another. The opposite operation can be done with the less than symbol in place of the greater than symbol. One thing to note and be careful about is when we write a single equal sign, we are setting the value of a variable. However, if we write two equal signs or equal equal, we are asking whether two variables are equal.
Let's practice. For the following Booleans, determine whether they will be true or false. These problems are also included on your worksheet for you to complete. The table of operators and operations are also shown to help. Pause the video to complete these problems. Now that you have completed these problems, let's go over the answers. Number 1, Boolean b1 is equal to 2 equal 2. This is true. Number 2, Boolean b2 is equal to 2 is less than or equal to 2. This is also true. Number 3, Boolean b3 is equal to 5 is not equal to 5. This is false. Number 4, Boolean b4 is equal to 5 is greater than 5. This is also false. And finally, number 5, Boolean b5 is equal to b1 equal b1. This is true because both b1 and b2 are true.
Now, let's move on to conditional if statements. If statements are like asking questions. Some examples are, is it raining outside? If it is raining outside, then we need to put on a jacket. Another question may be like, is 2 less than 3? If 2 is less than 3, then we need to perform some action. If statements don't perform or perform an action depending on whether a Boolean is false or true, respectively. Here is the structure of an if statement. First, we put an if, then we put parentheses. Inside these parentheses, we put a statement. This statement is called a condition. If this condition is true, then it performs the action inside the brackets. In Java, the action that we want to be performed needs to be inside these brackets.
Next, we have else if statements. Else if statements are like extra if statements that are checked only when the previous if statements are false. This model has an if statement and an else if statement. If the first condition is true, action 1 is performed. But if the first condition is false, but the second condition is true, then then action 2 is performed. If both conditions are false, no actions will happen unless we use else statements. Else statements are the default that happens when none of the previous if statements are true. This model has an if statement, an else if statement, and an else statement. If the first condition is true, action 1 is performed. If the first condition is false, but the second condition is true, action 2 is performed. But if both conditions are false, action 3 is performed.
Here is an example. It has an if statement, an else if statement, and an else statement. Based on what we have learned before, please think through this code. Pause the video and play when you are ready with your answer. Okay, now let's go over this example. The integer a is equal to 5 and the integer b is equal to 7. If we run through the if statement, we see that we are comparing a and b to see if they are equal. However, we see that a and b are not equal because 5 and 7 are not equal. So we move on to the else if statement. In this else if statement, we are checking if a is less than b. 5 is less than 7, so we can clearly see that a is in fact less than b. Because this fact is true, the code inside this else if statement is executed. Because the else if statement was true, we do not even need to look at the else statement. Compound operators. In this compound operation of two if statements, we need to make sure that the conditions for both if statements are true to perform this action. Another way we can represent this is with an AND statement. We put two AND symbols to write in this code. In this code, it does the exact same thing as the code on the previous slide. Both condition 1 and condition 2 must be true in order to execute the action. So, if condition 1 is true and condition 2 is true, the action will happen. However, if one or both of the conditions are false, then the action is not performed. In other words, and is the same thing as saying the word and in Java.
Here is another example. Please pause the video to evaluate this. Resume the video to check your answer. Okay, let's go over this example. We use integer a, which is equal to 5, integer b, which is equal to 7, and the string called result. In this piece of code, there is an if statement, an else if statement, and an else statement. The condition we are checking for the if statement is if a is equal to b and if a is less than 10. We see that a is equal to 5 and b is equal to 7, and 5 and 7 aren't equal. We know that a and b are not equal. Even though the other condition, a is less than 10, is true, since we are using an AND statement, both would have to be true for the action to be performed. Since the first condition was false, we do not perform the action inside the if statement. Next, let's check the else if statement. The condition we are checking for in this else if statement is if a is equal to b. We have already checked in the condition for the if statement that a is not less than b. So we know that the condition for this else if statement is also false. So the action inside the else if statement is not performed. Since both the conditions for the if statement and else if statements were not met, we just perform the action in the else statement. Here we see that the result is a is not equal to b.
This is another example of a compound operator. Here we have an if statement. If the condition inside the if statement is true, then action 1 is performed. However, if the condition is false, then we check the else if statement. If the else if statement's condition is true, then action 1 is still performed. Another way of representing this is the OR statement. We can represent this by putting two straight lines down between the two conditions. This is basically saying if at least one condition is true, the code is executed. This code does the exact same thing as the code on the previous slide. Here is an example. We are comparing A and B again. Please try the slide and play when you have the answer. Okay, for this example, we have an if statement. So the condition for this if statement is that either one or both of these is true. Is A less than B? Yes, it is. So that's why the result is A is not equal to B. Now for your programming challenge. Before you do the challenge, you need to include two aspects into your code. First, you need to create two double variables, one called x and one called y. The robot will move to a certain coordinate on the grid based on the values of x and y. For example, if you set the double x equal to 5 and the double y equal to 5, the robot will move to 5, 5. Next, copy this line of code. Int I is equal to random number 1, 3. This means that I is equal to any random number between 1 and 3, so I can equal 1, 2, or 3. After all of these steps, your challenge is to write the code in Java for these three English statements. If I is equal to 1, navigate to goal position 1. If I is equal to 2, navigate to goal position 2. If I is equal to 3, navigate to goal position 3. Remember to write the exact coordinates of each goal position. Make sure to use what we have learned today in today's lesson to complete the challenge. Thank you.